Where is time? This is something people have thought about for centuries and millennia, philosophers and scientists. It's an intriguing concept that has been changing through history. Egyptians already measured time based on astronomical bodies, the sun and the moon, but also constellations. It was a way of measuring the repetition of events in nature. In the 12th century, the first mechanical clock was installed in England by the Catholic Church. From then on, the clock has been a tool to control. Time was thought to be an absolute until the 20th century. The special relativity from Einstein broke that absolute. The faster you move through space, the slower you move through time. Because time moves relative to an observer, it is not an independent thing. For example, if you are here, still, on Earth, and you look at someone's clock on a spacecraft traveling very fast to a distant star, you would see their clock ticking slower than yours, observing time dilation for the person inside the spacecraft. But the person on the spacecraft would not perceive any time dilation, and their clock would tick normally, but would see that the clock on Earth is ticking faster than their own. That means time is always depending on an observer. Upon the return, the person on the spacecraft would have aged more slowly compared to the person on Earth. This example is seen in the movie Interstellar. So, time stretches and contracts due to velocity. Also, you move faster when you are closer to the gravity source, in this case the Earth core. That means time runs slower on Earth's surface than it does above the atmosphere. And in fact, satellites that are orbiting our Earth have to compensate for time dilation to get their clocks matched to ours because they are farther away from the gravity source. After that, it came Einstein's general relativity. With that, time was tied to space, and space and time were nothing independent without the other. The space-time was understood as a fabric that can be bent, distorted, and modified. In cosmology, in the universe, time depends on the geometry of space that comes by the mass of an object. The bigger the mass, the more the space-time fabric bends. And what about multiverses? Some scientists claim that multiverse is a natural consequence of inflationary, seen as bubble universes. The idea of multiverse also opens new possibilities for the concept of time. The cosmological time only makes sense if we assume that the universe has the same density everywhere at each moment in time. That means the universe is homogeneous. Time is merely a tool we created to function the way we think we are, to quantify events and to understand what we see. That time is relative and subjective to our perception is no news. Everybody can experience difference in the perception of time. If we keep doing nothing and looking at a clock and see each second passing by, 1 minute will feel long. If we are busy doing several things at once or we are enjoying an activity, 1 minute will feel very short. So, time is not only something that can change, but perhaps an abstract concept that doesn't even exist. In our rigid society, time has been seen or accepted as a linear concept to put an order in a sequence of events that apparently are irreversible. Someone is born, then different events take place in a specific order, one thing after the other, and finally one dies. A beginning and an end. However, that is not in accordance with nature. And we often forget we are nature. The disconnection between us, humans, and nature is the big problem we face, and also probably the cause of the climate change. We humans are not really seen as part of nature, but there is us and then nature, something else we take profit from. This is also reflected in time. We seem to live in a race to get somewhere. Time in nature by no means is linear and it doesn't rush. It is a cycle where each step has a purpose. The morning full of light, new energy, awakening, the noon giving the most, the afternoon and evening slowing down, the night resting. The seasons do the same. Spring flourishing, summer giving fruits, autumn getting rid of what does not serve anymore, and the winter just rest. The tides, the moon cycle, our hormonal rhythms as women, and the life cycle of planets and stars. During the lifetime of a star with its planets, new elements are formed, and then the star dies. And these new elements will be ejected in the interstellar media that will be available to other nascent planetary systems. With rocks, they do the same. They are born from solidified magma, then experience all sorts of changes, transformations into the rain, the wind, temperature and pressure. They are buried, melt again, and from that melt, new rocks are born. If we look at anything in nature, there are cycles, and we seem to have forgotten them in us. That also brings me to think about life and death, the way these concepts are learned in our culture. They are also a consequence of such thing as a beginning and an end, and subjected to the fact that we struggle to see beyond us. However, we die several times in our life. Experience makes us change in a way that we must kill ourselves in order to be born again, to rebuild, to change, to learn, sometimes just to survive. Death is part of our cycle. We die and we born repeatedly in our lives, but death is no end. It is just a step to metamorphose. We can take our life and the concept of time as a spiral, where things repeat but they are always different. You cannot step into the same river twice, because waters are continuously flowing on. Spring always comes, but each spring is different. Each instance offers a unique landscape that will not be repeated again. That means we have to remain fully present to live. If we only lived in the present and past and future were not remembered for us, then time would not exist. David Bowie said, "Time is one of the most complex expressions memory made manifest. It is something that straddles past and future without ever quite being present. Or rather, it at first seems indifferent to the present. Things in nature just are, and removing time the way we created it from our equation would free us as individuals. We would live differently. We would not have the sense of irreversibility. We would develop our deepest truth in each moment." It is no wonder that trying to understand the concept of time in nature is difficult, because we are trying to fit a variable that does not really exist into the universe. That also makes me think of a Japanese concept called ma. Ma is the space in between, is the emptiness, is the silence, is a pause. It is in between events, in between words, even in between objects. Ma is the emptiness that brings meaning to something. So it's the time and space to digest, assimilate. And in this case, time can also be something that's nothing, right? And we forget about this time, because we are trying to be in this capitalistic way of living where everything has to be productive at all times. Also, I put this example because nowadays it's very common to hear space as a synonym of time. All is transient. If we observe a cloud, we may think it forms and disappears. And that one, seeing that a cloud forms and disappears, makes us see something as it has a beginning and an end. But we can also put the cloud as part of a bigger picture and see it as a step in a big cycle that involves the atmosphere and the solid earth, and then realize that the bigger part of this cycle may be invisible. Sometimes we just need to observe without doing anything. During the pandemic, we had the feeling that society had stopped, that time had stopped. I remember being in my backyard and thinking that it was great to just be and observe. I spent large moments observing little things in nature and looking all that was invisible before. There was so much beauty around. I guess my message is that we worry too much about time, something we invented. We are independent of time. We are much more, and we don't live linearly but as cycles of learning and transformation. We should live more accordingly to nature because this is what we are.